I think the opportunity with the Commission of Inquiry into Paria, they released it. I've been begging, pleading with the Prime Minister to release the Commission of Inquiry. Over $100 million was spent on that Coleman inquiry into CL Financial, which was started by the People's Partnership, so it wasn't this government's initiative.
The inquiry.
Yes, and I said as far back as 2016, soon after Mr. Manning's death, I'd actually come to the show I-95 to talk about it. But the untimely death of Mr. Manning, it would not have been proper for me to go into detail on it, but I did say that he was not going to release it because there were people on both sides of the aisles who would have been affected by the release. It's affected me in my professional pursuits. It's part of what would be my legacy for my children, and it is really something that Hope needs for being a member of Hope, which is a senior position, and what Hope stands for me to start to say something. And finally, again, with the passage of time, I have said it, and I'm not going to go into detail, but they treated my husband very badly. You know, I don't think that Mr. Dupree disliked my husband. In fact, I think he did like him. But I think my husband recognized they wanted to get rid of him. And in fact, the weekend of his death, we were waiting for the flight. And he finally said to me, not like me, not talkative, he just said to me, I know they want to get rid of me and I'm ready to go. And that had been precipitated by a letter from the 18 office managers of the different agencies that had met at Clico's box at the Oval, signed by all 18, which he came and showed me the night, saying that they were aware that Mr. Dupree wanted to, hearing rumors that they wanted to remove Mr. Teixeira, and that he had done such a marvelous job. So the writing was on the wall. And so when he died...
but I mean, those people gathered sort of in support of him.
Yes, and they all signed and said that they hoped those rumors were not true, and they gave all the reasons why he was such a good vice president of marketing. So I think he knew the writing was on the wall. And then after his death, the way that they treated me as his wife, not me personally, I think all these things coalesce, but I think it's the Hope finally gave me the push to come out today.
Yeah, and so you carried sort of, some people might think it was unnecessary to carry a burden like that. You know, it's not true, but to carry that for all these years. But
right, but that's politics. You see, that's the unfortunate thing about politics, you know, or fortunate, whatever, however you look at it. You have to be realistic about politics. When there are enough voices, whether it is in the media, whether there are paid voices, whether there are people who really believe it, whether there are people who believe it is going to assist them, because I was the Minister of Finance, and whatever their reasons are, it is politics, and I was in a senior position, and I was a good target, and they did what they had to do, and I did understand it, and I understood it enough to know that I was going to be drowned out. And so I left it alone, but you know, with the passage of time, as I said, Hope really, and with the Commission of Inquiry into Paria being released, and the reasons that I just gave you, gave me the sort of impetus to say, you know, enough is enough, and I need to speak out.
Yeah, and you know, when we spoke some weeks ago in preparation for this discussion, you talked a lot about what you knew about who may have known and stuff that you were hearing in your capacity as Minister of Finance. To what extent you want to get into some of that as to...
Right. So the key issue here, as I understand it, and what was made the headline, insider information. Well, it really can't apply, but I understand why they use the term, because a public inside information applies to senior members of an entity that publicly trades, that knows that the stocks and shares are going to be affected by some decision that the other persons do not know of, and they're taking advantage of that. Well, that's not the case with CL Financial. It's a family-owned company, so it wasn't on the stock exchange. It didn't trade publicly, so it really could not apply to me. Similarly, the Prevention of Corruption Act, which the then acting DPP, who had been vetoed by the Prime Minister prior to my coming on board in 2007 or 2005, sent a letter to the then opposition leader, without my knowledge, talking about charging me under the Prevention of Corruption Act, which could only apply to state-owned companies. And again, CL Financial is family-owned. And I didn't even know. So I just want to make it clear what was being alleged is that I knew beforehand that there was a run on the company. I mean, there'd always been issues with Clico and CL Financial. I mean, going back decades. I do pray and all the things that we had heard and the whisperings and so on. But I think with the global financial crisis, which as Minister of Finance, you have to see my perspective would be different. I now saw Bear Stearns had approached me, for example, and within a weekend they collapsed because people lost confidence in them.
That's Bear Stearns?
Bear Stearns.
That's the U.S. New York.
Yeah, who had come to me to get our government to make some sort of investment. So there I was sitting in 2008 and seeing a global financial crisis in a very personal way and a very professional way, and being not minister in the ministry, as had been the previous case before me, but being the minister of and answerable to my prime minister and the country of Trinidad and Tobago. I understood the seriousness of it because I saw Bear Stearns collapse from a Friday to a Monday because I lost a conference. I saw an international financial center where we had gotten the MOU to sign, Lehman Brothers to sign an MOU with us. They collapsed. So these things were very real things that were happening around me. And I decided, number one, that I think it was about 35 million US that my husband had in CIB. I never put a cent in it. I inherited it. It was part of my inheritance. I never put a cent in it, not once, never inquired about it. I had a US account in another bank, and I said, and they treated me, in my view, not very well. We won't go into all of it. The final, meaning Clico, the final straw was, I don't think when my husband died in 2004, I was a lecturer at the university, I was writing textbooks, I was an academic living in the East. I don't think they know I anticipated that I would have gone into politics the way I did. And I would not have if my husband had not passed away, because my responsibility was first to my family. Secondly, that I would have won W. Amira. Thirdly, that the Prime Minister would have made me Minister of Finance. Fourthly, there would have been a global financial crisis. And fifthly, CL Financial would have collapsed when I was Minister. I mean, all those things, I didn't have that foresight, neither did they. So perhaps that was a good thing, because they didn't treat me very well, because they figured, this is my view. They didn't need me, so they didn't treat me very well. There were things that they could have done, kept me on their health insurance, invited me to the, every year they would have the August 31st event, to which my husband was the one that organized it. I was not invited. And so then in December, I think, what's his name, called me up. Very nice person, so nothing personal against him, Gerald Barnes, and said to me, we're having the January, having an event at Hilton for the agents, and they would like to present me with a bouquet. And so I said, no, I'm not coming. You're not going to get a photo shoot from me. You know what I mean? I said, what? You're going to get a photo shoot from me after you all have treated Russell's widow like this? No, you're not going to pretend that you are my friends and I'm your friends. I'm not going to be used like that. So don't send me the invitation. I'm not going to accept it. So you have to understand my personal feelings, which is a good thing, because I had read that somehow I wanted to treat them preferentially, that is Clico and CL Financial, because one of the main actors, which was Andre Montai, had been a previous treasurer of the PNM. So there was this view that I would have acted in their favor. Well, clearly that could not be true. I have a husband to whom I was very, very loyal. He said I was fiercely loyal, and I was. I felt offended by the way they treated his widow, not me, but his widow, and then the global financial crisis as Minister of Finance. All those things played on me. So, in fact, I had an annuity with them, and so was my feelings that when I was able to cash it in at the age of 50, 2 years later, I cashed it in right away. I could have kept it on, I did not. So I wanted to...
Because of the...
Yes, I wanted to have nothing to do with them. And by the way, just as we're talking, just to get this out of the way, the EFPPA, or whatever you call it, I didn't even know what it stood for. It's like asking Russell Teixeira when he was alive, what courses does your wife teach? He would say, well, I think she teaches something with succession I think she teaches something, but I'm not too sure. Why would I know what he thought? I didn't work in his company. You know, to give me that knowledge. It's a family company.
The
So
EFPPU is some kind of executive.
that's the one that a lot of people lost their money. And I got Susan Lane, so I'm calling names so they can always check it back. Susan Lane, I said, please write and confirm that
Who was she at the time?
She was still an employee of CLICO. And I asked her, please, I would like a letter for you to look and do a search to confirm that neither I, nor my husband, nor my children ever had an EFPPA. And she wrote me, our records show, and they can check that I did not have an EFPPA. So that takes care of that CLICO thing about me having an EFPPA. I never had it. Now, coming back to CIB, the reality is we have a central bank. And the central bank also has Inspector of Financial Institutions. They're the bankers of the government. And certainly if there are any matters which the government needs to know of that affect our monetary, our fiscal, the general management of the country, certainly that is the responsibility of the governor of the central bank. I also had within the ministry division called State Enterprises, which used to be a ministry in itself.
Yeah.
Mariano Brown was the minister responsible for that.
Because he was minister in the ministry.
Yeah, yes, and his portfolio definitely was State Enterprises. So we did have an arrangement that every Tuesday that we would meet and he would let me know, because we both had a very busy schedule. Mr. Manning was a demanding boss. And that he would come to me and let me know if there was anything I needed to know. And so one of the things we did do, and when they did do a document, was that at every meeting of these state enterprises, someone from the state enterprise division, either PS or someone senior, would attend the board meeting so that we would be able to know what was going on. That was the understanding I had. So I'm just setting the stage.
Yeah.
Okay, so how this inside information, meaning it means that I knew beforehand that there was a run on the company and someone either called me, texted me, emailed me, sent me a message directly or indirectly, however you want to put it, communicated it. You could use any form of communication that I knew that there was a run. Absolutely not. And I have asked them to please tell me. I don't mind. They can go out. I want them to say it. You notice they have never done it? And I would imagine that's one thing they would want to do. So, what happened? On the 14th of January, now I took out my money on the 30th of December, and I had asked my then personal assistant, you know, you get assistants, to write to them, because I'd called and said, I wanted to end the year with them, get out of there and put the money into my US account, which I had with a bank. And I asked her to write formally for release of my funds. They did tell me that, you know, I mean, when I think back about it, they did tell me, you know, you'll lose some interest if you do that. I said, I don't care. I just want the money out. You know, I wanted my money out. It wasn't much anyhow, you know. So on the 30th of December, we had a meeting, a last meeting for the year at the Prime Minister's office, his main office, the official office. And my driver, I told him, you know what?
Was it Whitehall?
No, not Whitehall. It was Whitehall. You know the office they have next to RBCC, always by QRC on that little stretch there.
Okay.
Right. So we just had our last meeting, and I was going back to my office. And I said to my driver, and this is around lunchtime, I said, let me stop in at CIB and get my check. Eh? I just want to end the year and get it. So I walked in there, in the middle of the day, customers around. I went straight to the counter where there were some young people, and I said I came to collect my check. Yes. So they said to me, they looked a little disturbed, to be very honest. Eh? They looked a little thing, and I said, you know, you have to give us a reason. I said, I have to give you a reason for my money. I said, okay, which was kind of true. I was wanting to invest and buy a small property, so I wrote that down. I spoke to nobody there. I didn't even know, even though I know who I am told, yes, if they could have been in front of me, I would not know who they were. I didn't work in CIB. It was my husband died in 2004. This is 4 years later. I had nothing to do with the company. I mean, it's just amazing to me. And I did it in the front, broad, in front of everyone. And if anybody could tell me that I went upstairs or somebody came downstairs and spoke to me, or I spoke to somebody, or I asked to speak to somebody or something, I would love them to do that. In fact, I was told, now this is, since I won't call it in, but this would be more like a hearsay.
Yeah.
I was told that they were so sure that somebody had told me, somehow, that I found out, that they put up a company, masked as a marketing company, but was an investigation company, to find out who told me. Nobody told me. No one told me, and that's why I've stuck to it. So, having told you that the conditions under which I took out my money,
yeah.
and I am telling you, I spoke to no one. I did not know anyone. I didn't know them.
And no one spoke to you about, or
No
spoke with
one.
you about what was happening?
Absolutely. I feel they wouldn't have. I have a feeling they may not have, you know, because I would have gone right to the Prime Minister, and I know, I don't know what was going on, but I might have said...
Because part of this allegation, this accusation over the years was that, so you did this, and without reference to the Prime Minister at all.
No, I didn't mean reference to the Prime Minister, it was my personal...
No, what I mean,
No.
that you
No,
knew something was coming down, and that you withdrew your stake in it, but that you did not advise, at least.
Right, well, I couldn't advise him if I didn't know.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But that is the as you call it, the mobile angle.
Yeah, I couldn't advise, and I would advise it, because I can assure you, during the time, that's why no one offered me anything after a while. Because what happened, what I found out is people would come, need not cold, and offer little things to me and see if I would take it. And as soon as they did it, I may have been naive, but not that naive.
As possible inducements for something.
Well, just a little thing.
Yeah.
Maybe testing the water. I say it was testing the waters. But I was smart enough, I think, to know that I wanted the Prime Minister to trust me. So as soon as they would do it, I would let him know. So after a while, nobody offered me anything. So coming back to what happened, so that's how I took it out.
Yeah.
So I thought nothing more about it. On the 14th of February, that's a Wednesday. Why do I remember it so well? Because that's when we have Policy Formulation Committee meeting, which is headed by the Prime Minister. And on the 14th of January, correct myself, the 14th of January, I came in my office, and there was a letter on my desk with a stamp of the central bank stamp, written by Mr. Dupree. And it was, I have it, I wrote it down in my witness statement, but basically it was really kind of confusing. On one hand, they're saying they have all these assets, they're in a good position, but they right now may need some temporary liquidity support, but maybe they don't need it. So it was I really didn't understand. Honestly, I was trying to understand what's this letter about.
So it's a letter from him on behalf of
Mr. Dupree to the governor of the central bank, the lender of last resort, I imagine, right? So I wasn't sure exactly what the letter was saying, because it was saying one thing and then it was saying something else. I have it here. Severe global financial crisis has impacted local and regional markets. He says CLF is being a significant part of the financial sector. In fact, according to the information that came out eventually, about 70-something% of GDP, that's what they control. He didn't say that in the letter, I don't believe. Then he said, while the assets remain strong in quantum and quality, they could be readily liquidated without incurring significant loss, and CLF is taking urgent and decisive action, which included a realignment of the group asset liability. Urgent liquidity is what may be required. You hear the word? May be required in the event that the financial crisis deepened. So you understand, the letter was not clear to me, not having known anything before. So I knew I was going to see it.
So you copied on it by somebody in the central bank?
The governor of the central bank sent it to me, and it had his stamp on it. And I read it before the PFC meeting. So after reading this letter and not quite understanding what this letter was about, I knew that I was going to see him, because at PFC, the governor is one of the members of the PFC.
Oh, the committee.
Yes, he's one of the members. Senior permanent secretaries on the energy, other ministers, the minister in the ministry, other persons would have been in the meeting as a standing position. So I knew I would have seen him. So I did see him. And after the meeting was over, he said, "Minister, did you see my letter that I sent to you? The letter that I sent you?" I said, "Yes."
This is the central bank governor at the time.
He stamped, that was a letter from Mr. Dupree.
Mr. Dupree, I see.
That he had sent to me with the central bank stamp on it. So he asked me if I saw the letter. And I said, yes. And then he said, well, I need to speak to you and the Prime Minister about it. I said, okay. And Mr. Manning always kept a small office there because he would come for these meetings. And so myself, the Permanent Secretary, Alison Lewis, the Governor of the Central Bank, and I went into the office, into the room. And that is when the conversation was about CIB. That is when he said, for the first time I'm hearing this. First time I'm hearing this. And I understand, I guess he doesn't have to report every meeting he has. But apparently on January the 7th, he called a meeting with members of CL Financial about his concerns about the way they were, he used a terminology, the regulatory concerns. And I think it came, and the reason I think that gave him the kind of the power to do so is because one of the things he asked that I did in 2008 almost immediately was pass the Financial Institution Act. Now, the governor was the one who said to me, I need you to cast that act because... The
governor at the time was Ainsworth Hayward?
Ewart Williams. Always
okay.
Ewart Williams.
Okay.
Always Ewart Williams.
Okay.
He said to me, Minister, that act, we need it passed. We have a 3/5 majority at that time. And he said, the reason is because there are too many intercompany transactions going on. And he specifically mentions Clico and CL Financial to me. This is in early days in 2008. And he also said it would also allow him to see the consolidated accounts, which would really give him a picture into the insurance company over which he did not have that kind of authority. So he urged me to pass that legislation, which I did. And at that point in time, it gave him the authority, I guess, to tell them, which he did when he reported it to us in that meeting of the 14th of February, that he had spoken to them on January the 14th. January, it's always January. That on January 7th, he did tell them, I did not know, but he did tell them he had regulatory concerns, and he scheduled another meeting for the 15th of January. Again, I did not know anything about this. Apparently, on the 13th of January, I suspect a lot to do with that FIA that now put a kind of obstacle in their path for CIB to be sending money to CL to make their kinds of risky investments, as the governor finally said. They came in, I think Mr. Dupree, Mr. Ram Ramesh, the governor, others, I think Mr. Hiralal, who is the Inspector of Financial Institutions, I believe he would have been there, and Wendy Hussain, who was deputy. They had a meeting, and the person, and with Mr. Dupree, and that's when that letter was handed in. And apparently, the discussion was giving them temporary liquidity support. What did that mean? What did that mean? So then I said, well, why do they need temporary liquidity support? And that is when, for the first time, I heard about this thing you call investment notes, something investment certificates, which were of 3 months duration, in which huge interests were being paid by CIB. And major investors were state-owned companies. I understand, I don't want to get it wrong, but I think NIB had about 3.5 billion. It's billions of dollars. Unit Trust. This was I'm in it, and you see, because remember, it's state enterprises was not my. It was. Right. I wasn't overseeing that. Yeah. Right. So for the first time, I made investment note certificates, INCs, which I didn't even know existed, and apparently, some of them had matured, and they said they were not reinvesting because they were looking at the global financial crisis, looking at what's going on.
Some of these very companies.
These very major companies with billions of dollars, state-owned. And some of them had matured because they were short-term. And they said they were not reinvesting. And those that were near to maturing also said they were not investing back in CIB. And CIB got into a panic because apparently that was what was keeping CIB afloat.
All right, we get to a point where we have to pause it.
Yes.
And we will continue in the second edition of this. Well, thank you very much. It's been long in coming, and there's a lot to still unpack and digest from what you're saying there. But the point is that you'd held this sort of...
And I didn't know anything about it at all.
Yeah.
I never even heard the term.
Yeah.
And Mr. Brown was called in. And apparently he had gotten a visit from someone to try to get the government to put those, to reinvest. He did not report it to me, he reported it to the PS. And Mr. Manning called him in and asked him if that was true. He said yes. He asked him, why didn't you tell the minister? He said he couldn't give a good reason. So all of this information was absolutely new to me.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much, Karen Inez, the Sheriff, former Minister of Finance, breaking her silence of decades about what she was accused of having done. But she's saying that why she kept it from addressing it over these decades, why she thinks it's the time to do that. Now, we'll have edition 2 of this program, of this discussion in our next program. This has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
WESN.
Now this is it part when the bacchanal start boy, fetting from your heart, yeah. This is how you fall. Boss, you drink, so you can't drive. Full stop. Playing it smart this carnival. Get a designated driver. Call a taxi or call a friend. Rum and road don't mix. Drive smart to be safe this carnival. This is Eddie Charles. Now this is the part when the bacchanal start. We playing it smart. This is a euphoric feeling. Green. Oh yeah, you're about to experience.
While things and twirls, we have a contract. This year we go hard like nail, like we on road with trucks bigger than home back. We also take a tongue tap with calendar and mark that date. The 27th of January, it'll be my time to jump up, my time to run, but yo, it is called Federal Coronation. QRC, January 27th, Vikings are coming.
Come down on this long road, moving with my soldiers. We don't move in our cops.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
in all diplomatic relations are business ties. India is the world's largest importer of military equipment, and France is the second largest supplier. So that is one of the strongest pillars of this alliance that we're seeing being celebrated today.
He is the first person to be executed by nitrogen apoxia. A U.S. inmate in Alabama on death row was killed using this new method on Thursday night that the UN says may amount to torture. Solange Mougin has more.
There is nothing pretty about an execution. It took the state of Alabama over 20 minutes to put Kenneth Eugene Smith to death, with the family of his victim and his own family watching.
Our son was crying after having just watched his father take his last gasp for air. My question to you guys is, where's the humanity?
This was the state's second attempt to end the convicted murderer's life. In 2022, his death by lethal injection was aborted after officials spent hours trying to place an intravenous line for lethal injection. This time, the state used a new method of capital punishment, one that had never been tested before: asphyxiation by nitrogen gas.
Some involuntary movement and some agonal breathing, so that was all expected.
Alabama says the gas is the most painless and humane method of capital punishment. It also provides the state with a solution against lethal injection drug shortages. But experts at the UN Human Rights Council and others have warned it could be torture. Even the U.S. Supreme Court weighed in. It dismissed a last-minute legal plea to block the execution, but in her dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said that Alabama was subjecting Smith to an unconstitutional risk of pain.
Having failed to kill Smith on its first attempt, Alabama has selected him as its guinea pig to test a method of execution never attempted before. The world is watching.
In 1988, Kenneth Smith and another man killed 45-year-old Elizabeth Sennett. The men had been hired by her husband, a preacher, and were paid $1,000 each. Convicted to life in prison by a jury, a judge overruled that, and he sentenced Smith to death.
The Paris Olympics are 6 months away, and if you ask Parisians on the street, many will say the city is nowhere near ready. With construction slowing traffic, metros and suburban train lines out of service because of public works, and residents preparing to escape the city during the games. According to officials, however, everything is right on schedule, as Liza Kamenov explains.
And the countdown begins. This summer, the Paris Olympics will attract some 15 million spectators who will watch 203 nations compete in 32 sports. The 2024 Olympics aim to kickstart a new era of sustainability and green innovation for the Games. With its €8.8 billion budget, France has vowed to make historic progress in reducing the environmental impact by halving the carbon footprint of previous Olympic events.
As you've understood, 2024 will be an outstanding year for sports and organisation, a moment of sporting and cultural celebration, and also because we will continue to prepare for the future thanks to these games.
With 6 months to go, organisers are working